Uh, okay, we're recording, and this is our Empathy Cafe. And just a quick introduction. Maybe we can go around do personal introductions. I'm Edwin, and where you're from, and any your political leanings. I'm Edwin Rutch in El Cerrito, and I'm from from the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and political leanings is empathic. So, Bill, should I?
Sure. My name is Bill. I'm a retired special education teacher. My political leanings are on the left, but as I say, it's complicated, and I'm in Northern California.
Okay, and Alex with the cat.
Yeah, I'm Alex. I'm in Northern Virginia. I don't know what my political leanings are. Probably left, sort of, but not really decided, I guess, at this point. Yeah, and yeah, was there any other questions?
That was it. Just a short.
I think that's...
Yeah. Carolina?
I live in Gdańsk, north of Poland, Central Europe. My political view is, I would say, radical left with Gandhian methods, Gandhian means.
Okay, so this is an ongoing series of empathy circles, which with the intention of bridging the social and political divides and to build a culture of empathy. And we want to scale these up and train more people in taking part and facilitating them. And I would like to take them to Congress and have the Democrats and Republicans do them. And as any viewer, you can contact us, take part, going to empathycircle.com. And yeah, I guess just the base, everyone here knows how to do the empathy circle. It's like one person speaks, they select who they're going to speak to, that person reflects back what they have to say until the speaker feels heard, and then it's the listener's turn to speak and select someone to speak to, and that person reflects back what they're hearing. We just go around like that for the time allotted, which is 2 hours. And so we can jump right in since everyone is familiar with the process. And our topic is, how do we bridge the social and political divides that are really kind of tearing the world apart? And you can also talk about anything that you would like as well, whatever is sort of alive for you. So let's just jump right in, and anyone want to start? And let's select who you'd like to speak to.
I'll start.
Okay.
Okay. I'll speak to Alan. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Well, one of the reasons I'm here is because I think that this is an excellent way to bridge those divides. I have been underwhelmed by political vocabulary and nomenclature, and I believe that sometimes it's not used to enlighten, but to make us stupider. And one of the one of the words that I really hate whenever I hear it is populist. If they throw that around, that anybody who says talks about the poor somehow is a populist. But it really depends upon what your policies are as to whether you're really advocating for the lower classes or not. I'll stop there.
Okay. Okay, so it sounds like just like very dissatisfied with kind of the public discourse, language, definitions, especially the word populist, that are kind of being used in the common culture. And it sounds like you sort of see something like this kind of exercise of empathy circles as kind of the solution to that, or a way of improving that.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, thank you. And I feel that that's because we human beings are not really labels when you look at them in my work. I had a lot of students who were labeled. If I just looked at those labels, they wouldn't get better. I had to find out who they were on a deeper level, and then speak to those strengths and try to mitigate their weaknesses.
Okay. So in your personal experience working as a teacher, you found the labels to be kind of ineffective, and they sort of stalled the progress if you got stuck on the label and you had to kind of move past it to look at the person, to be able to make real progress. And so you're kind of applying that to the idea of political labels as well.
Right. And the kind of dialogue that we have here facilitates a deeper, more nuanced view of our fellow human beings. And it's from that understanding that a new, more unified, peaceful way forward can be found.
Okay. Yeah. So you're really seeing sort of the hope of applying this better way of understanding each other and not just using labels as a way of kind of changing the way that we all interact and work together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Alex. I've been heard. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. So it's my turn?
It's your turn. Select who you'd like. And
okay.
We can do away with the 5-minute time limit, maybe 10 minutes max, but just.
Okay.
That's how we try. We're a small group and we're all experienced here, so.
Okay. I don't know if I'm going to use 10 minutes initially, but
up to.
I guess, yeah.
And who are you speaking first?
I guess I'll speak to you, Edwin.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I guess I feel I guess I'm not exactly how to describe it, but I just feel a little sort of subdued and just sort of wanting to like observe a little bit first, like the conversations that we have here, not having anything like immediately come up for me, but I'm guessing something will. So I'm kind of just like, that's kind of where I'm at. I don't really know what to say exactly.
Okay, so you're not sure what to say. You'd like to observe the conversation for a little while and then see sort of what arises for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And just being able to say that actually is like very relieving.
So even just being able to say where you are feels like it has a sense of relief to it, feeling of relief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I guess like, so I've been doing this like Friday sort of webinar thing where they use sort of NVC and they talk about global issues and stuff like that, and they sort of try to apply it. And so I guess I'm like that. This is sort of stimulating some like memories of what was talked about in that. So I guess I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if like I'm seeing connections there, but I don't necessarily have anything like specific to say about it yet. But yeah, a lot of that conversation is on sort of the way that language kind of makes communication ineffective between people and makes it harder to understand each other. Yeah.
Okay, so you're part of an NVC group that is also looking at global issues. And the thing that sounds like that's come up there is sort of the point about language, the importance of language in communicating. And you're seeing some parallels maybe to what we're doing here too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And having trouble thinking of like examples right now. I'm sure like as we start talking more, I'll think of things. But in general, I'm also just feeling very sleepy because I spent the night helping my girlfriend take care of a cat who didn't want to take its medicine. So I have a lot of brain fog right now.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so your brain feels a little foggy. You didn't get enough sleep. You had to take care of the cat, and so just not a lot is coming up for you right now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I'm good with
You're
that.
forward? Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks. Then I'll speak to Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah. So how to bridge the social political divides? I do think dialogue is core to that, and especially the structured dialogue that we're doing here. You know, having if we leave it to just regular dialogue, you know, the regular tools of dialogue, it often falls apart. So having some extra structure like this helps.
So what I'm hearing you saying that you believe that dialogue is a kind of basic structure for bridging political divides, but not just regular dialogue, but especially, particularly, empathic dialogue, because when we kind of exercise typical regular dialogue, it's very often fallen apart, and you prefer the method of empathy dialogue, which we're practicing here.
Yeah, and so for me, it's like how to promote it, you know, how to spread it and have it be accepted. It's like there's four of us here. We've got 230 people in our Facebook group who said they were interested in taking part, and there's sort of a disconnect between people saying they want to do something and then actually doing it, and really trying to understand, you know, what is it that we, you know, it's not just doing the thing, but it's getting people motivated to actually take part too.
So what I'm hearing you saying that mm, I'm not sure how to understand what you just said.
Well, I can say it again. I would say it's about the motivation to take part. How, you know, so I kind of looking at how to motivate people to get involved
Okay,
in these dialogues.
so practicing the empathy dialogue, it's also for you. It's also, well, it's not just practicing, but it's also building. I assume is building kind of emotional intention, will, motivation to actually bridge the
Yeah.
political divides.
Hmm.
So it's not just dialogue; it's also kind of social action, as I
Yeah.
understand you.
It's sort of a motivation to that I'm, well, at least, you know, that's, I guess the point I was making was I'm kind of just wondering how in our Facebook group there's like 230 people or so who said, hey, we want to take part in these dialogues, and there's four people, you know, kind of taking part in this circle, and I kind of like wondering, well, why is there not more people wanting to take part in the dialogue, and then, you know, trying to understand like how to create that. You know, I'll stop there.
So you mentioned that. Sorry, you mentioned that in our Facebook group is over 250 people who kind of express their interest in empathy dialogue, but there are only four of us who actually participate in this call. So you kind of wondering, uh, is it correct? You're wondering how they want to be engaged in it?
Yeah, I'm wondering, I guess I'm wondering how might I inspire them to take part? You know, it's like, what is it, you know, we're just putting it, the message out there doesn't seem to work. There needs to be something else for it to be more inspiring to take part.
So what I'm hearing is kind of doubting even in success of or something, because you're thinking how to motivate, how to engage them more, you feel kind of um, maybe disappointed a little bit that just four of us participate. That's what I'm hearing. I'm not
Yeah,
sure
well,
if
there's some disappointment. Yeah, so that's true. So there's
I'm sorry. Probably I hear more than I should.
no, that's fine. You just check if it works, and it worked. There seems to be a lot of motivation for the battle, like kind of name calling, and there's a lot of excitement in that, and I see a lot of sort of motivation for that battle. And like, what is the motivation for having a dialogue, and what's the emotional experience to there's this guy, for us, there's some kind of an emotional experience, some kind of a felt experience that motivates us to take part, and how do we, kind of tap into that in this society, like how do we, what is the motivation for people to take part in dialogue?
So now you kind of pondering what sort of emotional experience provokes people to engage in empathy dialogue. What happens to them that they want to be engaged and try? Well, they join to this group, 250 people. What motivates them? What kind of emotion drives them
Yeah,
to
what kind,
participate?
maybe it's like, what is the felt experience, that will drive them? Like, is there something, a feeling, you have a feeling of being excited, or a feeling of hope, or a feeling of growth and learning? So there's these different feelings that we get from this experience.
So what I'm hearing you think that it might be a lot of different emotions that drive people to participate in empathy dialogue. It might be feeling different feelings, and you are curious. What is it? What
Yeah.
motivates people?
Yeah, I feel heard. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I um, hear too much
Yeah,
in what
you're
you were saying.
feeling sorry that if you hear too much.
Okay, so I should choose somebody. Maybe I should choose Bill.
Okay.
I was thinking, and I was listening to our last call. We were talking also about bridging divides, and I was thinking how I would translate that expression into Polish. And first thing was zasypywanie podziałów in Polish, what means kind of filling or backfilling the hole, or backfilling trenches, or uh, divides. That's how we express that in Polish. But it's okay. I stopped there. I'm sorry. I stopped there.
Okay. So you were reviewing the last empathy circle around bridging political divides. And as you were doing it, you were thinking about the phrase in Polish, which thankfully for our internet audience, I won't try to repeat. But it means that backfilling a hole so that you can bridge the divide. That's the English equivalent.
Yeah, and actually this Polish version of this expression doesn't sound to me well. It kind of sounds, well, backfilling the trench or the hole, it sounds like making us the same, me and my opponent. And I don't feel good with that, because I'm different than my opponent. I don't want to be the same or equal. I want to make a connection. That's something different. So in English, it sounds better.
Mm-hmm.
Building the bridge
Mm-hmm.
sounds better. And actually, there is another expression in Polish. We say building the bridges between different sides. Yes, there is such expression, and probably this is better translation, I think.
Okay. So, as you like the metaphor of building bridges rather than backfilling, holes, and the reason you objected to that was because it just seemed like you were on level. You were just by backfilling the hole, you felt that you were just equivalent, another cipher, just like your opponent, and that's not what you want or how you feel. However, you do want to make a connection to them. So the connection is important, and so you like the bridges idea better than the backfill.
Yes. And then I start to think, well, try to imagine the situation when I'm talking to different opponents. We still have problem with meeting somebody who is radically different, opposite to us. For example, right wing or far right wing for me. It's still difficult. But I start to think about how it would look like.
So you're contemplating. It's hard for you to imagine how you would relate to a person who is really far right wing, and so you're just kind of contemplating and seeing how that can be done in a way that would be functional for both of you.
Well, actually, I start from situation. Okay, let's imagine me and kind of liberal, or I don't know, a representative or a Chicago economic school monetarist. Well, I could talk to them. I could establish kind of empathy dialogue with them.
So you're talking about more formal, and you're saying you could bridge a divide with liberals, and then also the people at the Chicago, Milton Friedman at the Chicago Monetary, which was gave the backing to what we have, Reaganomics. So you could talk to them.
Yeah, but now let's imagine that you talk to some radical nationalist, anti-Semitic person, and try to establish this empathy dialogue, try to reflect what they are saying. And that looks quite difficult for me.
So let's just say you're dealing with a very dyed-in-the-wool white nationalist or Nazi or person who is unabashed about expressing their prejudiced and racial views, and you would have to reflect that, and that feels uncomfortable to you.
Well, I would try. I might declare that I would try, but I believe it will be very interesting call if one day somebody like that appear here and will appear here, and that will be a real practice of kind of empathy dialogue and building bridges. How it will go, oh my gosh, that might be something very difficult but also very interesting.
So if ever there would be someone who is really that far right to come here, you would, first of all, you're committed to try to listen to them, even though you don't know exactly how successful or how willing you would be to reflect some of the things that they say. But it would also be a real test of the empathy circle process, and to see how that can be, how functional it is, how dysfunctional, or how it can be improved.
Yeah, that would be a real trial. How you call it?
Trial, yes.
Try of this method. I would like to participate in something like that.
Okay. So, while you see that as a challenge, you feel really up to the challenge, and you feel you'd like to take that challenge of trying to bridge a divide with someone who expressed those views.
And the last thing I want to say is any limits or rules I'm not aware that might stop a participant from saying something? Well, that's my question to Edwin.
Right.
Mm.
So the question is that are there any rules about vocabulary or what you can say or how you can say it that would limit, things, that would put sort of a container on things?
Yeah, I feel fully heard. You, as always, you always say better than I said what I mean.
Well, thank you.
That's incredible. Thank you.
That's very kind, but you're great. I really enjoy it listening. Okay, Edwin. All right. I've dealt with anti-Semitism in my students, so we're people. That's what I found. I guess I'll tell this little story. I had this student, and he identified as probably a white nationalist of some ilk. Whenever I said something or asked him to do something he didn't like, he would either say, "That's gay" or "That's Jewish." And so I had a rule in my class that you don't use a pejorative, you don't use, insulting or racial slur or religious slur or whatever as something bad in our classroom. That's just a rule we don't do, whether it's gay, Jewish, or if you said, "Oh, that's Christian," I would still say have the same rule. This is a kid who was going through a tough time. His older brother was actually at his individual education, his IEP, or essentially he was his guardian. This guy was about 20 years old. So, and I won't repeat it here. So then the next day, I tell the kid to do something, and he uses the K word, which I won't repeat. And he goes, "Oh, that's real K," And I'm saying, "Hey, that's like the N word for Jews." And he looks at me and he says, "My brother said you wouldn't know what it meant." So I'll stop there.
Okay, so you see people as people. It's not like you're seeing everyone's humanity. And in your school or your teaching, you did have a rule not to use pejoratives or sort of names like that. One of your students did use it, and a bit of a longer story, but you basically did it, and you're telling him, you can't do that.
And what the understanding that I got is the ignorance that comes from hate, that how it's misplaced, and that if you when like this older brother may not have liked me or whatever, based on religion, but he did respect me because I made his younger brother do the math. And I'll stop there.
Okay, so there was some respect that you had from this student's older brother, because you asked because you had the rules, and he kind of respected those rules, and that you're seeing that hate is sort of based in ignorance.
Right. And the process I used was much more involved, but it is involved in the same basic ideas that we're using here in the listening circles. In other words, to listen, to find out, what we can do to make things more functional. And then I'm done.
Okay, so you use within your classroom, you use sort of the basic same principles as we're using here in the circle, which is to understand, where people are coming from. And I think there was a little bit more in there, but.
Yeah, to where they're coming from, and and then to form communicative bridges.
Okay, so you were in your classroom. You didn't use like the empathy circle, but you did have sort of the basic underlying trying to understand people, building bridges and having sort of positive, constructive outcomes.
Great. Thank you. I feel very heard. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. And I'll speak to Alex then. I see Jyoti has joined us. I don't know if we're not seeing you, but I don't know if you're, anyway, we'll start with Alex. So yeah, the first thing is just responding about the, bringing in, like Carolina was talking about, bringing in the far right. For example, it should be kind of interested in doing that. That we did go out to actually, our empathy tent group went to an event that was a right-wing event, and we set up the empathy tent, and we're sort of the only, more or less left-leaning leftist group there. And a group of 5 Identity Europa members came over, and they were the members who were at Charlottesville, who were carrying the tiki torches, and we're one of the major organizing groups there. And so we did do an empathy circle with them.
Okay. Okay, so you're kind of sharing about an experience similar to what Carolina was interested in doing, where you kind of brought the conversation to the right, and you went to their event and you set up your tent, and you ended up having a conversation with this group of people that were involved in some of these, I don't know, some of these events that happen. Like the Charlottesville.
Very right wing, so it was that, there were the ones that were in the khakis, and they got a little symbol here on their shirts. If you see the videos of the people holding the torches at Charlottesville, which was a big right wing, thing where someone was killed. And so we actually did have an empathy circle. 5 of them came in, sat down with us, and one of our team members, Dave, is Jewish. So the topic of the Holocaust did come up, and what does it mean? What does Nazism mean? And they were actually trying to take part in empathy. Use the reflective listening. So. So we did do that, and I thought it kind of ended successfully, because they actually did, after multiple tries, were able to reflect back when Dave said, "Oh, for me, Nazism means that half my family, extended family, were killed, and the other half were spread around the world," because he was from Austria, his family was from Austria, and then it took a lot of tries for the person. It took like 4 or 5 tries for the person on the right to just reflect that. But he finally did, and it felt like, I could see my friend talks about it, or Dave talks about it, that it really was meaningful to have that person finally hear him instead of spouting all kinds of, kind of conceptual stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, just reflecting kind of more on this conversation that you had with these people, in which you talked about the Holocaust with your friend, and they were able to actually do the exercises, the active listening, and they actually worked through it despite there being some struggle. They were actually able to have kind of a heart-to-heart conversation with your Jewish friend, and sounds like that probably feels encouraging to have seen something like that occur.
Exactly. So it's that I know that the container can, if people stay to it, follow it, that this connection can happen. It's a matter of bringing people into the container. There's like a big wall to going from there into this container. We went to them. We were like there was a whole group of other tents that were all conservatives, all right wing, and it was just us. And then Bill and I went to another right wing rally, and it was just him and I, and I think another couple of people that were just there. And then that way you're kind of right there with the other side. So, but there is sort of this barrier. It's like that I just, kind of struggle with how to overcome this barrier to bring people into the circle.
Okay. So you're kind of seeing it as this thing where once you can kind of bring people in, and maybe it's a matter of trust or something, but once you can get them to have the conversation with you, then there's usually progress. But the bigger obstacle is just to even begin the conversation or get them into the container, as you put it, just to even get that initial thing going. That's actually the biggest obstacle of the time.
Yeah, and then there's another piece that might be important, is a sense of that something is going to happen as a next step. Like in mediation, there's a conflict, and then there's a sense of connection that happens, and then it's like, what do we do now? What are some steps going forward? So that creates a step, and we don't really do that in the empathy circle. It's just trying to create connection. Maybe having a step or a forward next step, that's a constructive forward next step, is needed to create a sense of forward motion or something like that.
Okay. Okay. So you're kind of reflecting on, I guess, ways to improve or build on the empathy circle, and kind of comparing it to mediation, where usually there's the resolution, and then there's the next step, the action, and you're wondering if something like that would be valuable.
For example, with
do you mean as a way to
entice people?
Is this okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I talked over because there was a little bit of a lag. So it's, for example, the mediation between God and Satan. They were talking about their issues. And then the last half hour, I said, well, what would you like to offer, or what would you like to request going forward from the other person? Which is often a comment, a question in mediation. And then they started talking about that, and they came up and say, we need a new story. We need a new creation myth, a new creation story. And then they were going to work together to create this new story. And then we set time limits, like we're going to do this within 6 weeks. We're going to meet. You really lay out in very detailed form what is going to happen next.
Okay. Okay, so in this experience, you spend a good bit of time just kind of doing the empathy thing, but you sort of wrapped it up with like a request that you'd like from the other person or the other side or whatever. And so in this example, it sounds like you actually came up with kind of a creative, encouraging result of, we're going to kind of reinvent the story of how our two sides interact or were formed, I guess.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thanks.
Okay.
We have Jeanette.
Screen is frozen,
Oh,
so I'll listen.
okay. So you and Jyoti will just listen. Is that Jyoti? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Did you want to take part, or?
I think it was Janet who responded.
Pardon me?
I think Jeanette said she will just listen, and then Jyoti, did you want to take part?
Jyoti, you are muted.
Am I muted?
Oh no,
Yeah.
I hear you there.
Hi.
Oh, there you are.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, Johnny.
Do you want to take part? You can be a listener, or speaker too. I did.
Okay, I'll be a listener.
Okay, but it's up to Alex now. You can choose whoever you would like.
Okay. I'll talk to Jyoti if you'll listen.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. I don't know where to start. Well, so something I had been thinking while I was listening to other people, and I guess I just wanted to say it, is I just realized that um, I have a certain level of apprehension doing this empathy circle because I worry that I'm not reflecting things well, or that I'm missing the point somehow. Maybe I'm reflecting it accurately, but maybe there's something else that I should be doing. So I have some apprehension going on, some tension, I guess. I'll stop
So
there.
you're talking about how you've been feeling about this process is currently some stress about and worry that you're not doing it right, or that that you're maybe missing something.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also feel a little apprehension because I don't necessarily have like really strong political views. I don't know as much as a lot of people do about what's happening in the news and in politics. And so I worry I'm not going to have very much to contribute. People are going to be disappointed when I talk or something.
So your mind goes off in the direction that people may judge you, that you don't have enough to say, that you're not informed enough, and so you worry about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's not just the judgment. I mean, it's also just like, that's, the subject that we set for the empathy, this event. And I don't want to like, yeah, I guess I'm worried that I'm not prepared, or I'm going to like derail a conversation or something because I don't have as much to say necessarily, but yeah.
So you're worried that you'd like to have more to contribute.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 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 And I guess also I'll just say welcome. I don't know. Yeah. We've never met, but it's good to have more people here.
Okay. So you're just welcoming me, and like enjoy having more people here.
Yeah. And then maybe like the last thing, I was thinking about what Edwin said when he was sharing. He was wondering why he doesn't see as much motivation for people who care about these political issues. Why don't they come to events like empathy circles, or why aren't they participating in more stuff like this? And he was kind of talking about, we have all these Facebook members, but they're not all coming. And I sort of see a connection. Sorry, this is a lot, but so my girlfriend is very interested in environmental causes, and I always wonder why she doesn't see more value in personal development and like empathy and stuff like that, and having empathy for the other side. She doesn't seem to see the value. But maybe I'll stop because I feel like that's a lot.
So you're reflecting on what Edwin said about having a lot of Facebook members, and then kind of not understanding why they don't show up here, and also not quite getting the disconnect between why your girlfriend has a lot of concern about environmental issues, but doesn't make the connection between personal development and learning how to make connection.
Yeah. I guess I'm connecting that to what Edwin said, because it seems like people care about these large global issues like global warming or racism or something like that, and they have no focus on their own personal, they don't see any value in coming to, it seems like they don't see value in coming to something like this and learning skills of active listening and empathy and like that. They just want to go out there and protest, and they want to like they want to go after the actual issue, and they don't want to spend time kind of working on themselves and working on, I don't know, they're more just basic human features, I guess. And I see that similarity in my girlfriend as well, where she wants to go out and she wants to help the environment and like that and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, maybe you should also learn how to approach the subject in a way that you can communicate more effectively, something like that.
So you're observing the same tendency in a lot of different circles where people don't seem to be too interested in sharpening the tool of themselves, but want to just go out with the skill set they already have, and without doing any work on themselves or making themselves more effective at what they do.
Yeah, because in my mind, that's like the much bigger issue. It's like, if everyone was like a lot more self-aware and could kind of like own their own emotions and like could take more proactive measures for what they're needing, like a lot of these things probably wouldn't be as big as they were. But it doesn't seem like other people see that value in sort of having their own self-awareness. Yeah.
Do you see a missing link about how people could be a lot more effective?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you.
So I've been very sick with the flu for the last week.
Who are you speaking to?
Let's see, who's hasn't gone yet?
Bill and Carolina haven't spoken recently.
Carolina, I'll talk to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I missed last week because I was with the flu, and I haven't been this sick in many years, so I'm glad to be over that. Pretty much over it. I'm still a little weak, but I missed the group last week. Did you meet last week?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the exciting news that I have. I mean, I don't know. I find it interesting hearing, just listening to everybody talk, and I don't know what else to talk about.
Well, so what I'm hearing you saying that you were ill last week, that's why you didn't join our meeting. And you saying that you didn't get sick for a very long time, and it was something strange to you, and you still feel quite weak, but you happy that you are over your illness. You feel better, still weak but better. And you feel kind of disorientated. You don't know what's the topic, and as I understand.
Right. I'm assuming it's politics, and I don't have anything to bring up. All I could say is that I'm just kind of bored, and yesterday when the new news came out about, I don't know, the investigations being finally delivered and everything, I was like, turn it off. I just don't want to hear anymore. I'm just like, they're just gonna, say the same thing for, 6 days, and then they're gonna, say the same thing and same thing. So I'm just tired of it all.
So you don't know what is the topic, but you assume it's about politics, and you feel kind of tired of talking about politics. And you heard yesterday about some investigation. It was
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, the Mueller investigation report.
Oh, yeah, was
Yeah.
ended. Yeah, I hear that too. So you heard about this ending of Commission of Miller, Miller Commission investigation. Yes, but you didn't want to listen to it. You were just overwhelmed and tired of listening about politics.
Yeah, I've just noticed that whatever the topic is, they'll just kind of say the same thing, which is like maybe 2 talking points or something, and they'll just say it over and over in 1,000 different ways, the same thing. And like, okay, I'll just read my book. You know, if I tune in again in 5 days and hear about the topic, maybe they'll say 2 more things. But it's insulting how they waste your time saying nothing.
So you're feeling like they talk all the time about the same. It looks like they change topics, but it's not really the change of topic. It's still, well, maybe they start something new, but then they come back to the typical narrative and they again talk about themselves, and it's kind of I don't know how to express that, a kind of political fuss, and you think that if you turn off media and turn on them after a week or two, it will be all the same. Is it correct?
Well, they might have 1 or 2 more things to say, but if I just kept the news on and listened, I would hear the same thing at least 8 to 10 times in one day, for several days, and I'm just tired of the pattern. So I just
So
have
you
better things to do with I just have better things to do with my time.
So you see kind of pattern in those political talks you hear in the media, and maybe they say a few new things, but overall it's all the same. And in general, it's all the same, just in a new version, kind of all the same. And you feel it when you hear few times a day the very same thing. You feel overwhelmed and you prefer to do something else because you feel it's like a huge waste of time.
Yeah, that's my bottom line. Thanks. I figured out
Thank
something
you.
to talk about. Okay, thank you. I feel heard.
Thank you. So who might choose? Well, I don't know, maybe Bill, because Bill wasn't talking
Okay,
for
sure.
a moment again.
Mhm.
So I appreciate the story Edwin told us about those meetings where people with very opposite political view met and talked to each other. I have to find those talks with nationalists, white supremacists. I actually look at most of recordings, but probably I missed those one that one call. So I have to look at it.
So you're, excuse me, you're impressed that that we have reached out to people who are radical right and have done those things. You haven't seen recordings of those, and you're looking for them.
Well, I found few recordings. I remember, for example, recording of a leader of white supremacists, or I don't remember his name, and the pastor who was actually LGBTQ. I remember such talk, and I remember a few other talks or recording from the tent in Berkeley. That was very interesting. But still, I would like to see this process of getting through the wall or the barrier between two opposite sides of the dialogue. That might be interesting to see it, kind of analyze how it happening, the dynamic of it.
Right. So you've seen some of the ones of the videos of the tent in Berkeley where there was the LGBTQ person, and then also the person on the right. And but what you're mainly focused on right now is the process that leads to getting people to sit down and actually participate in that dialogue.
Mm-hmm. I have to admit that I have university education at political science, but I don't listen news at all, almost at all. I do it once a day, and more political discussion once a week, because I feel it as a mess, a horrible mess, as well as Jyoti or Alex. Alex feel kind of overwhelmed, and Jyoti also. And I think, yes, it's a huge waste of time. Listen to every news and every little detail they add in the next news. It doesn't make sense, really. I prefer to listen to the kind of general view of what happened during the week in weekend, okay? And there is kind of summarizing resume of the week, and that's the moment when I hear only those things that live longer than few hours. So it's kind of filter.
Okay. So you agree with Alex and Jyoti, and even though you have a political science degree, you find that listening to political discussions is just a waste of time, a massive waste of time. So you kind of avoid those sorts of things. Will then kind of on the weekend kind of look at the week in review, and then sort of decide what you're interested in or what you're not, or what you feel that you need to find out more about, or just kind of let go.
And actually, I look at the facts in the news in the way, okay, what will from those newses, what will, so to speak, survive during next few weeks, during next few months, during next few years, what we will still remember about, and what we forget. We will forget. This is kind of filter for me, what is important and worth to listen or learn more, and what I just don't want to listen to. And especially, I think those typical daily quarrels, oh, I hate that. I had to say, it's not a dialogue, it's kind of showing up. So it's not a real political thing. That's what I believe.
So again, you're frustrated by the back and forth, and you try to really get away from what is advertised as political dialogue, but just really is grandstanding on, both sides, and no attempt at dialogue. And so you're trying to filter those things out. And also, the other important thing that I didn't mention was what's going to survive. In other words, what are the important things that you're hearing that will stand the test of time and that we'll still be talking about in more than just a few days or a few weeks' time?
Yeah. That's a very good expression, test of time. I have to remember that. And I remember that Alex mentioned something about he has problem with what to put his focus on. He mentioned his girlfriend, who is very deeply engaged in some environmental issue, and he would like to put more attention to personal development. And that reminds me, Meta Center for Nonviolence in Petaluma, California. They have this website, metacenter.org or something, and they have the roadmap. It's kind of a circle with few parts, and there is a part in the center of it. There is a part of personal development, person power. They call it person power, to develop person power. And then there are all the issue you can do. It might be more individual, more broad activity, social, political, in different areas of our life. So that's kind of association I had listened to Alex. This roadmap built by Meta Center for Nonviolence in California.
Okay, so again, you were thinking about Alex's, talking about and focusing on personal development as opposed to necessarily get involved in a movement per se that's more externally focused. And then you were thinking about the Center for Personal Development. There's a nonviolent NVC group in Petaluma that has a roadmap. And then it starts with you in the center, though the person, not you, but the person in the center, and developing their personal sense of worth, self-esteem, and power. And then from out there, from that stance and secure in that, then moving out into any direction they feel.
Well, it's not exactly nonviolent communication group. It's
Okay.
well, they might talk about nonviolent communication, but it's called Meta Center, Meta with double T, Meta Center for Nonviolence. It's more broad action they exercise. I would like to come back to bridging divides for a second, and that will be the last thing I want to say in this turn. When I was thinking about this facing a person who is radically opposite to my political view, and for example, anti-Semitist or Nazi or somebody whom it's very difficult for me to accept, I struggle with that. I realize, I start to think what Gandhi would do if he would participate in empathy dialogue, how he would like, how it would look like to make this empathy dialogue together with Gandhi. And I recall that his expression, he's saying that you have to make your enemy a friend. And how to make a Nazi or fascist or anti-Semitist a friend? How can I do that? How can I do that? That's the question I face.
Okay. So you had a correction to my earlier thing saying that the place is the Meta Center for Nonviolence and Peace, and it's not necessarily connected with NVC directly, although they may use some NVC techniques. And then you took, and you wondered, as you approach your own misgivings about entering into an empathy dialogue with someone who would be, has hateful views, then you were thinking, oh, what would Gandhi do? Would he attempt a empathy dialogue? And then you do remember that at one point he says, you must make your enemy your friend.
Yeah.
And so,
Yes, I'm asking myself, how can I do that with somebody I perceive as an enemy?
hmm So right, so you're wondering what's the process, and then how can you do that with an enemy when inherent in that is also opening yourself and being vulnerable to their hateful ideas.
I believe it's about person power.
And you believe that it all comes down to a person's personal power.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
I feel heard.
Sure. Okay. Let's see. Who wasn't talked? If I listen, like Edwin.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I've thought a lot about this. I too have had family that have been direly affected by the Holocaust. I have heard Holocaust stories, and my family, and we came and we became professionals, mostly in the helping professions. Again, I'm a teacher, and so I had to deal with all sorts of hate groups in my classroom, and there was only one label I cared about. You were my student. And if you're a student of mine, then you will get the same limits and you will get the same respect. As I said elsewhere, despite whatever political views they had, I always told kids that they were heroes because they were children dealing with adult problems, and there's nothing harder in the world. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about their strengths and how we can overcome those challenges. I'll stop there.
Okay, so you and your family were affected by the Holocaust as well, being Jewish and affected by it, and your family became professionals in the helping profession, and you're a teacher, and in your classroom, you had to deal with hate, students being hateful, and you had sort of a ground rule that if you were a student of mine, I mean, that's what was important. And then you set certain, sounds like you tried to encourage your students, trying to see the humanity of all your students, and then encourage them by telling them that they were heroes dealing with because they were dealing with adult issues.
And one of the things that I wasn't just, yes, I did want to encourage them, but I would tell them the truth. It's very important that I didn't just, candy coat things or, give them an A when they didn't deserve it or anything like that. But they earned that. They earned that hero designation. And I wanted them to know that I respected that and there was more work to be done.
Mm-hmm. So you didn't just coddle them. You just, they had to work for that hero.
They were heroes.
To be heroes, they had to work for it.
Well, they were already heroes. They had to work to be successful.
Okay, they were already heroes, but they had to work to be successful, and you weren't going to coddle them, basically.
Right. And my feeling about I hate Nazism, but I don't hate Nazis. And one of the ways that I learned, there was a film on it. I forget, I.F. Stone or I Am Stone, I forget the two, but it was called American Reich, and it was made in the 80s. And there's this one interview with the son of Brown Shirt, a neo-Nazi, and they asked him, so how do you feel about this? And he said, well, we've got a march every Saturday. It's hot. I have to wear these hot boots. I'd much rather be playing with baseball with my friends. It's embarrassing. I get kind of teased at school, how's the brown shirt and things like that. And I thought, thank God, human nature. That's a student. And when anybody, does that kid deserve to get beat up or because he's in a 12-year-old in a march that he doesn't have any choice about? I feel the same way about DACA, by the way. And the answer is no. He's a student. And he needs to be talked to. He needs possibly to have some limits set and talk to, but that's the way you deal with everybody.
Mm-hmm. So you would see people not as Nazis, but as students, and then and you're giving an example of a young person who is a brown shirt, and so they're out there marching, but then they're also talking about the problems, the kind of the human issues of being out there marching. Hey, I'd rather be doing something else. So it's not like they're just not all kind of mean, hateful or something. They have other feelings as well. So you're seeing that there's other sides to people as well. Sounds, is that?
Yeah. And then I'll pivot a bit about talking about the participation here. I was a special ed teacher for 37 years, and I had a chance and got immediate feedback if things didn't work, by the way. And I believe that the principles that we're doing here in this circle are really core human principles that are key to our development as a species. And particularly in that, I really appreciate Alex. And because he came and he participated, didn't quite know, am I good enough? Am I going to be judged? But he's in there pitching. And he's in there trying to find out. And, and there's nothing better than that. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to, and sometimes if people who do, shouldn't be listened to. But it's that effort and that questing that if we're going to survive as a species, that is going to win through. So I salute everybody who feels inadequate and feels, and that's one of the benefits of this circle for those who would like to participate, is that the relief people feel when they're not judged. And I'll stop.
So a benefit of the circle is here you're not judged. You can bring whatever you want, and you're not judged. And you really value people having sort of a seeker questing and sort of facing any fears, apprehensions, and sort of taking steps, even if you feel that.
Thanks. I feel heard, Edmund.
Okay, thanks. We'll speak to Alex then. I don't see Jyoti there. So let's see. So I had made some notes here. I guess, yeah, so the first thing that I was thinking about is apprehensions. Like there are feelings of anxiety, apprehensions for taking part in an empathy circle. So, you're doing something new, you don't know the people. I mean, speaking for a lot broader, not just you. So I'm kind of curious about laying out all the different apprehensions people might have. And so it was good to hear the ones you had, because then we can hear those and try to address them.
Okay. Yeah, so as like a sort of facilitator of empathy circles, you're very curious to hear sort of what issues come up and what things sort of prevent people from being involved with like apprehension. So we found it valuable to hear my perspective and the apprehension I was having, just as another kind of way to help you learn and maybe adjust.
Yeah, and really to gather, because I know I would be apprehensive. I'm apprehensive joining a new group, that I don't know the people, the participants, and, am I going to be judged? So, for example, so I have so that is so there are these sort of blocks towards participation, and how do we really how for the empathy circles, how do we kind of reduce those blocks, make it easier to take part, where those blocks to participation are sort of made as smooth or removed as much as possible.
Okay.
I'm just sitting with that question. So I'm just sitting with that question. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like, so you're just kind of thinking about different ways of kind of smoothing out the process, maybe, of getting people involved in empathy circles, and you're seeing like, oh, it's a group that I don't know, it's a bunch of people I don't know, so there's some like initial sort of, whatever fear that comes from that maybe, and So you're kind of just sitting with the question of like, what are things that I can do to kind of make it easier, get people more engaged?
Yeah, that's
Right?
it. Exactly. Thanks. So, and then in terms of what Carolina was saying about the recordings, the recording of we didn't record that empathy circle in that tent, that one. So a lot of these we do at the tent, and then there's just no recordings because it's just we're not really set up for recording. So that one would have been good to record, but we didn't have it recorded.
Okay.
Too sad.
So you,
Too bad.
yeah, you didn't record the one that Carolina was interested in.
Yeah. And that is, again, that does remind me of the producer coordinator role, to bring people together, to find the people on the right, to find people on the left, to, bring them together is really hard. I mean, it just takes a lot of dialogue, a lot of work. It's like the empathy circle might be 2 hours, but it could be 20 hours to bring the sides together. For example, I heard, Marshall Rosenberg did a mediation between two tribes in Africa. I remember it, 2-day mediation, but it took a year to bring everyone to the table. So that whole part of producing, coordinating to bring people, it's just a huge amount of work, because you have to build relationships, you have to build some trust, you have to educate people about what is happening, they have to have the motivation. So it can be a lot of work to bring really polarized sides together.
So you're seeing this kind of like less obvious sort of cost of doing this kind of work, which is that just beginning the conversation, kind of like you mentioned before, just getting people into the container. Like if you just looked at the conversation, you'd say, oh, it looks kind of easy, it's 2 hours or whatever, but you're seeing this like much bigger thing of like, how do I actually begin the conversation that's like orders of magnitude harder.
Yeah. And that's been my experience. Yeah. And then the other thing is about topics that are engaging. So, we're doing like the first week of the month, we're going to be doing climate change. It's going to be like the same topic every month. And Jessica is going to be facilitating. So your girlfriend might be interested in that, right? Because it's climate change, environmental issues. So people are interested in specific topics. So I mean, if there's someone that sort of champions an empathy circle on that topic, like climate change, that might build a community, around that topic, because people are very interested in specific topics.
Okay. It seems like you've got a lot of kind of curiosity and a lot of different questions and thoughts around empathy circles going on, and now you're thinking, the idea of having someone champion a subject, that's another thing that you could do to kind of have that community going a little bit stronger.
Yeah. And then, like next week, there's a Thursday empathy circle will be on patriarchy. And so that's the whole issue, right? It's like people are going on around patriarchy, and then there's issues like racism. And, you can kind of build a community to kind of explore each of these. So if there's someone who's interested in that topic, as a facilitator, they could, perhaps specializing on one topic might be a way of engaging people. Because right now we're kind of jumping to different topics. Maybe that's, people don't, they say, oh, I'm interested in that topic. That's not my theme. But if you hit the one that's their theme, they say, oh yeah, maybe I'll take part.
Okay. So apart from the idea of having someone champion certain topics, just the element of having certain topics and a little bit more focus, just that itself could be attractive to people. You're thinking maybe.
Yeah, and even one circle, for example, what I'm hearing, for you is like, personal growth and development, learning communication skills, which is like that center that Carolina was talking about. If you can develop good communication skills, you apply it to everything. So how do we, just talk about developing good communication skills. And what's that? How do you do that?
Okay. So you're seeing that as like another topic that you could have an empathy circle on, is like you could also have it on personal growth subjects, communication skills and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I thoroughly agree with that, because if I think that's core of what's missing is just good communication skills within the culture. And that's what I sort of see empathy circles as, is if we could have empathy, this practice is just a gateway, one of many, in the schools, in politics, having politicians use it and model it. And, the culture really needs, it needs just better communication skills. And with those basics communication skills, whatever the issues are, they just get dealt with. And there's not a real focus, there's not a systematic focus on just good communication skills.
Okay. So yes, you kind of resonated with you this idea that like communication is kind of at the core of a lot of these things, and there's sort of a lack of focus on that in the sort of like systems of our culture.
Yeah, exactly. And the last thing is the Meta Center. They're here in the Bay Area, and one of our empathy tent team members, Lou, who's held some of these circles, Carolina knows him actually. He's actually working on a documentary on nonviolence with them. So we do have a connection with that group.
Okay, cool. So seeing a connection between your efforts and the Meta Center Carolina brought up.
Yep, I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Cool. I'll talk to Bill if he'll hear me.
Okay.
Okay. I guess the first thing, I don't know, Jyoti said that she's leaving soon, so I don't know if there's if we should say bye now, or if there's anything she wants to say. Jyoti, did you hear me?
Yeah, I may have to go to work, but I'm gonna just watch my texts on my phone to see if they call me. But I'll be here and for a bit more.
Okay. Cool. All right. Yeah. I know where to begin. Yeah, as I've listened to everybody speaking, I have different thoughts and things that I want to share, and then the next person speaks and I have something else, and then when it's my turn to speak, I can't remember anything that I wanted to say.
Okay, so you expressed, first of all, concern for Jyoti, that, she was heard and that she felt heard, and now you're kind of composing your thoughts.
I guess the first thing that comes to mind is I appreciate your appreciation, Bill, and your encouragement with for me and anyone else who's maybe kind of feeling reserved and shy. So yeah, I'll stop there.
So you appreciate my appreciation, and also, hopefully that goes out to other people who have similar feelings that you do.
Yeah, because it's comforting, and I guess gives me a sense of safety and acceptance. Kind of, it's okay, whatever hang-ups I might have, I don't need to worry about them.
Mm-hmm. So you really appreciate the sense of safety here, and that relieves a lot of your worries, and so frees you to think about other things.
Yeah, and I think it's actually especially nice to hear it from you, at least for me, because I was to some degree afraid. Just from listening to you, I can hear you have, this is a very like important topic to you, and you have a lot of passion about it, and or at least that's my interpretation. And in past encounters that I've had with people who are speak very passionately about politics, it's they've been kind of scary and not very good conversations. There hasn't been a lot of two-way communication. It seems like the other person just has so much to say that it's even difficult to communicate with them. And so I guess I had some fear of that with you.
Sure. So when you first engaged, and I came across as come across as very passionate. And in the past, there are people who've been passionate, haven't been the best listeners, and been very judgmental if you don't share their passions as passionately as they passionately do.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why it was especially nice to hear you. I mean, it's actually very inspiring to hear that you're both very passionate about the subject, but at the same time you're very accepting and encouraging. It's very like enjoyable to see both of those sides in one person.
Right. So you are encouraged to what you perceive in me is a combination of passion and also openness and acceptance.
Yeah. It's very, very kind of like warming and comforting to see that.
So it's warming and comforting. Yeah. You feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess something else that I thought of was when Edwin was talking about communication and like how that's like the core thing of a lot of these issues or something. Something that I've started to think about lately is like communication is an issue, but it seems like it's very like mixed with some other concept of like self-awareness or something like that. I don't know exactly what I'm saying, but I guess I have some reservations of saying that we just need to be good communicators. Maybe I'll stop there.
Okay, sure. So it's hard. There's a lot of complexity that's swimming through your head, but what you're feeling is that good communication certainly is important, but there seems to be something else that's left out, and you're kind of searching for what that is.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's like a huge like emotional element of like, I don't know what to say exactly, but it's like a lot of these issues that are like politics or climate change or whatever. I guess one way of putting it is like, why does the communication break down? And to some degree, that's a lack of skills. But I think to another degree, it's just like we don't know how to handle all this emotion that comes up, and it's like a lack of like some kind of internal empathy or awareness or something, and that prevents us from even being able to hear each other or something like that.
Okay. So again, I don't know if I got this straight, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're kind of struggling with this. Communication, again, you see is important, but there seems, along with that, there seems to be some blocks, and you're trying to ferret those out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I guess, it seems like even people who have very good communication skills, like people who have practiced it a lot, if they get into a very sticky situation where it's very emotional for them, they can still kind of get overwhelmed, and you send the communication skills can go out the window. So I feel like there's some also just some element of like self-awareness or like introspection that is also very important to have, but it's very vague. Yeah.
All right. So people can have excellent communication skills, and they can go on, they can be passionate. But then also what there seems to be sometimes is a lack of what we call metacognition, or awareness of what you're doing, and gaining perspective. So even though they might be very eloquent, they could be, swinging left and right, not politically, but just going all over the map, and not necessarily being aware of how that affects and what other people are thinking, and things like that. They can be too self-absorbed in their own narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is sort of a meta note, but I'm feeling a lot of apprehension right now because I feel like everyone's waiting for me to say something, and I don't know what to say.
Okay. Well, while you're doing that, I'll reflect. So essentially, now you feel on the spot, and so like everybody's looking at me what I'm going to say, and so you're kind of just going and experiencing that.
Yeah, and I'm like conscious of the time too, because I don't want to take up too much time. We only have 20 minutes left. Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'll stop there. Just
okay.
Let anyone else go.
All right.
Well, thank you.
Sure. No, thank you. Okay, where are we here? Edwin, do you want to start the wrap up, or do you want to?
We still have. See, I have 38 here, so we've got maybe one more.
Okay.
One or two more, depending on how
Jeff,
long they
do you
go.
have to run, or I'll speak to you? What do you have? What's your deal?
Yeah, I can be here for a little bit longer.
Okay, so this won't take long. Okay. Well, God. Well, one thing that came to me about where we are, and there was sort of a place I would get with my students, especially when I first had them. Obviously, there would be what we say conflicting paradigms between myself, the parents, and things like that. And what I would do is simply state what I saw and check in with the parents, and then we started to come together, which is sort of. But one of the things that I had to do was be consistent and to be clear. And that's sort of where I feel we are with the empathy circle right now. I feel that people don't realize the value in actually participating, not only in their personal lives, but on how effective it would make them in their activism in the greater world. And I'll stop there.
So you're talking about your teaching life, and when you, I think this was when you got involved with a new group, or maybe at the beginning of the year. You didn't say quite, when, but you would notice that you had a difference of paradigms, and that you would I don't remember how you established. First, you created some clarity about your paradigm, and then listened. Or can you say that again?
Sure, absolutely. What I did is that, yes, I had to be clear and consistent.
Clear and consistent about what? About your
about behavioral norms, about prioritizing safety and behavioral norms and learning.
Okay, so you established clarity right up front about boundaries, expectations, limitations, rules, and you know where you're coming from, and so you were real clear right from the beginning, and to establish where you are coming from.
Right. And what I found over my career, that these basic, this is not, woo-woo science, basic psychological science and things that we know about social dynamics work. And I would see improvement.
So just simply by you're stating the simple like norms that are always assumed, and being clear and consistent about those basic simple things established a foundation which created a sense. I'm going to just assume that what you're saying is a sense of safety and facilitated an atmosphere that that worked well. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And bringing it back to the empathy circle where we are in our progress now, I think of the Karate Kid. Wax on, wax off.
Okay, so in applying some of the same principles here to what we're doing is in our empathy circle, we're just practicing the foundational tools, the foundational practices, and it's sort of like the Karate Kid, practicing the basics, wax on, wax off.
Yes, thank you, Jody. I feel very heard.
Okay.
Okay, we have time for one more. We have 5 minutes before we need to do the wrap up. So if you want to go ahead, Jyoti.
Okay. So Alex, in listening to you, you want to talk? Can I talk to you? So what I'm hearing is a lot of like searching for how to navigate these situations, this dynamic that seems to reoccur a lot. And the dynamic is where someone is all lost in their own ideas, thoughts, beliefs, values, passions, and is missing another whole piece. And that whole piece, that they're missing has within it other people, other people's feelings, other people's needs, and am I hearing you say that how do you get included, and how do you create equality or fairness in an environment where one or a few people may be the dominant personalities and they take over and just run with everything that they want to do, instead of having any kind of influence within the culture, the environment that establishes something else, so that there's a balance. How do you establish something so that there ends up being fairness and there ends up being perspective? Is that kind of getting at some of what you're like struggling with?
Well, maybe just to reflect first. So you were listening to me talk about the communication element, I think, the communication, and you were kind of trying to understand what I was getting at, and you're hearing kind of a searching for a way of life where people are treated more equally and there's more balance and kind of respect. Is that kind of what?
Yeah, I'm just trying to put in words what I was hearing you like kind of grappling with I just wanted to find out if that, or just get some clarity about what the main point was there.
Okay. Okay, so you're just trying to understand what my point was. I could try and answer that, but I don't really know what my main point was, and like, and it's your turn to be reflected. I don't.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess that I was hearing in some things that you said, a dilemma that I often have myself, where people will, the dominant speakers take all the attention and time, and then the people who, then there's a whole lot of other people that never get to contribute or be heard, or to have their values valued.
Okay, so you're kind of finding what I was saying very relatable, like you've had experiences where there were certain people who were speaking more than others and seem to have their opinion kind of being heard more, and then there are other people who were kind of not being heard as much. These are experiences you had.
Yeah, and I was wondering if when Bill was sharing, if he was talking about establishing the basics like he did, if that was a way for him to kind of address what I'm saying. He established in his classroom some foundational things that made it possible for people to navigate. And I don't know if that's kind of where he was, why he said that.
Okay. So it sounds like in general you're kind of grappling with this idea of having kind of equal, respectful discourse, and you're sort of thinking about what Bill was talking about, and maybe in some ways that kind of served that purpose by setting these sort of ground rules of we communicate, and there's like emotional safety or social safety or something. Is that one way to kind of create this mutually respective atmosphere?
And that's
Is that
the
right?
time too, as soon as if you feel heard. Do you feel heard by that, Jyoti? Just, we have 10 minutes to wrap up, so.
Yeah, it's like, I guess the bottom line is, how do people be valued in the face of others' passionate ideas.
Okay. So you're kind of thinking about this idea of how do you mix people who want to be heard with people who are very passionate and may, even without knowing it, may kind of take over the conversation.
Yeah. A lot of times when people take over.
Well, I need to stop there. We need to end on time. Do you feel okay? So I'm going to stop the recording, and we're just going to